If you are not rich in Nigeria and you are not politically connected, then you had better not allow yourself to be caught in the Nigerian justice system if you know what is good for you. At least this is a common view among Nigerians about Nigeria's law enforcement agencies and the Nigerian legal system. How true is this assertion of justice inequality between the rich and the poor? And what are some of the causes? What does the nation's constitution say about it? These are some of the questions that we shall address on today's summit. Welcome to the show. I'm Shala Jay.
The Nigerian constitution says that all citizens are equal in the eyes of the law of the land. It also says that nobody is above the law. This means that everybody in Nigeria must be accorded the same and equal treatment, from the poorest citizen to the richest citizen, all the way to the president of the country. There should be no discrimination or special preference to anybody under the law. In practice, however, Nigerians maintain that there is absolutely no equality in the Nigerian law and order system. The public alleges that the rich and powerful are above the law, while the rights of the masses are commonly trampled upon by a very unfair and unjust justice system. The police officers who arrest accused persons in disputes or criminal matters are indicted, and the court system where the cases are tried are also indicted. Ultimately, it is alleged that the size of a person's bank account and political connections determine whether the person receives justice in a case. However, the ignorance of the law by the masses and their failure to demand justice has been blamed for some of the injustices in the land. Many Nigerians are arrested every day for a variety of offenses. They are commonly put in handcuffs, and some are also physically abused by the law enforcement officers during arrests. On the contrary, the rich and powerful Nigerians are accorded special treatment in their arrest procedures. In fact, they are hardly arrested. Rather, they are invited to report to the police at their own convenience. Many of them often do not honor the invitations. On January 5th, 2016, Mr. Olisa Metu, a former publicity secretary of Nigeria's People's Democratic Party, was put in handcuffs as he was arrested on charges of corruption. There seemed to be less interest initially in whether Mr. Metu was guilty or innocent of the alleged crime, as many critics accused the law enforcement agents of disrespecting Metu by handcuffing him. This brought up the public question about two provisions of the law in arresting and handcuffing a suspect. And indeed, Metu was right to protest. Nigeria's constitution does not say that a suspect or defendant may not be handcuffed, bound, or be subjected to restraint, except A, there is reasonable apprehension of violence or an attempt to escape, or B, the restraint is considered necessary for the safety of the suspect or defendant, and C, by order of the court. This section of the Constitution makes it clear that the rights of ordinary Nigerians are regularly violated when they are commonly handcuffed during arrests. Olisa Metu's profile in the society only called attention to this unlawful procedure. Sadly, however, the rich and powerful may have been liberated from such illegalities by this exposition, but poor Nigerians are still commonly handcuffed and often brutalized during arrests. This implies that two phases of the law in Nigeria is often a result of the ignorance of the law by the masses, as well as the ills of the law officers that capitalize on this weakness to violate the rights of the people. Financial gratifications have often influenced special discriminatory treatment to the rich and politically connected Nigerians when they actually breach the law or are alleged to have breached the law. When the current Senate President, Bukola Saraki, was arraigned in 2015 on corruption charges, he was invited to report to the Code of Conduct Tribunal, an invitation that he initially did not honor. He was encouraged by his colleagues who considered the arraignment and trial to be a witch hunt to disrespect the distinguished Senate president. Refusal to honor invitation by law enforcement agents is a common phenomenon among influential Nigerians. In contrast, regular citizens are not accorded the option of invitation to appear at the police stations or the courts. They are invaded, often brutalized, and whisked away in handcuffs. Also in 2017, law enforcement agents arrested some judges in the nation's court system on charges of corruption. The judges were accused of selling justice to the highest bidders and thwarting the law that they are supposed to uphold. Again, many Nigerians did not seem to be interested in whether the judges were guilty or innocent of the allegations. While some critics condemned the method of the arrest of the accused judges, others insisted that the distinguished judges should not have been arrested in the first place. And many members of the public saw all of this as a suggestion that the judges are above the law of the land. The gist of the common argument was that anybody accused of breaching the law is bound by the Constitution to go through trial to establish innocence. The president of the country is bound by this provision, just as much as a peasant in a village. Any attempt to circumvent this in favor of any class of persons is an affirmation of the allegation of two faces of the law in Nigeria. It will also seem that the law has two faces in trial procedures of accused persons in Nigeria, whereas the trials of the ordinary citizens are often concluded in a matter of few months, few weeks, or even in few days, and often under inhumane conditions. The rich and powerful are accorded special treatments of respect in trials that go on almost indefinitely. Indeed, it is argued that many of the accused rich and powerful citizens only go through trial because they have fallen out of favor of bigger powers. For instance, the ongoing corruption trial of the Senate president is said to be a direct result of the election of Saraki as Senate President in 2015, which happened in clear defiance of the choice of the powers that be in the ruling party. The public also laments about disparity in the sentencing stage of persons found guilty of offenses in Nigerian courts. The tendency in other democratic societies is that the bigger a convict's offense, the more severe the sentencing. The reverse seems to be the case in Nigeria. It is difficult to argue against the common public insinuations and direct allegations of financial and public inducement for judgments. The gist of the people's argument is that whereas the poor are frequently thrown into prison for unreasonably long sentences for stealing paltry sums of money or food items to save their families from impending starvation, mega looters of the treasury who destroy the nation's economy and force the petty thieves to do the crime are routinely set free by the nation's corrupt justice system and left to enjoy the loots. Before the emergence of Buhari as president in 2015, attempts had been made to prosecute few rich and powerful Nigerians on charges of corruption under President Jonathan. Many of the cases ended in massive travesty when judges granted injunctions to stop the prosecution of the indicted persons. The judgments were widely criticized as illegal. However, the judgments were upheld and the accused persons were not prosecuted. Many of them were ex-governors, and some are currently in the nation's federal legislature.
This is the summit, and we are talking about two faces of the law in Nigeria. One face for the poor, and one face for the rich and the so-called powerful. How true is that justice is for sale, and the poor has no justice? Naturally, there are bound to be arguments on both sides of this assertion, and we shall endeavor to address all perspectives. We shall take it in various stages of stakeholders, beginning with one group of Nigerians with me now, who maintain that the assertion of two faces of the law is true. The group goes by the name of Our Mumu Don't Do. Area father, popularly known as Charlie Boy, the convener of the Mumu Don't Do. And this is a movement now that has kind of captured the imagination of the country. With him is also the National Secretary of Mumu Don't Do, in the person of Adebayo Raphael. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Let's begin at the beginning with the law enforcement agencies who arrest law offenders. And the question is whether we have disparity in the way that they treat the poor and the way that they treat the rich and the so-called powerful. But before we get into that, let's get a background on our Mumu Don't Do movement, which aims to reshape the psyche of Nigerian youths to proper democratic revolutions in Nigeria. Do you think Nigerian youths are ready for this brand of revolution? And what achievements have they recorded so far? Let me first invite you, Charlie. Two faces of the law. What exactly does that mean to you?
It means that, first and foremost, the law is an ass. The law protects some people while it does not protect others.
Did you say the law is an ass?
It's an ass.
Okay.
From Sokoto to Port Harcourt, there's injustice everywhere you turn around in this country. Injustice against the poor, injustice against certain regions, you know. And that is why in our movement we say, our Mumu don't do. Our is a collective thing, not just my stupidity. What is Mumu? Mumu is Iberiberism, Nzuzu, or stupidity, okay? If the poor wants to, if somebody wants to enslave you, unless you agree to being enslaved, then you become a slave. True. But if you say, enough is enough, I'm never ever going to be a slave no more, okay? That is when your Mumu has finally reached the bus stop.
And you don't do.
And you don't do.
Okay.
And enough is enough.
Okay.
Okay? So, of course, there are different standards that those in leadership today have used. They have a different set of standards for themselves and for their friends and their family members, different set of standards for the common man, which is wrong. Nobody should be above the law. But a lot of people in our environment seem to be above the law. And that's why they act with such impunity, such criminality. They are not accountable. And what we are saying as far as the movement is concerned is that it is time to hold leadership accountable. Simple.
Adebayo, you are National Secretary to Mumu Don't Do. Our Mumu Don't Do. I like the name. What exactly is your role in this organization, and how do you see the two faces of the law as it relates to the poor?
First, my role in all of this, I have to first and foremost say that thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. But my role in this is to support the movement's objective, which is to enlist youthful energy, values and visions, and mobilize the people, harness their intellectual, artistic and cultural resources to bring about a social change that benefits everyone and not a few. On the issue of two faces of the law, I think it is important that we try to conceptualize the issue. Because when there is injustice, then there are two parties. There is the oppressed and there is the oppressor. The situation in Nigeria is that we, the people, are the oppressed. while the people who are meant to represent our collective interest have turned against us to become our oppressors. And that is why today in Nigeria, there is so much injustice going on. As we speak now, the youth of this country are being terrorized by instruments of the state. As we speak right now, so many people are dying because some people are wallowing in unfettered corruption. And you look left and right, there's a saying that when two elephants are fighting, the grass suffers. Unknowing to the Nigerian people that the ultimate power lies with the people, we have allowed the injustice that has characterized our society to go on for too long. And that is why the Amumudondo movement says, there comes a time in the history of a suffering people when the status quo that has eternally failed can no longer be sustained. So this system that we are currently operating in has failed the Nigerian people. It has failed us so woefully. And it is time that we understand that we, the people of this country, can no longer be victims of injustice. Because if you watch this space, while we, the people, are law-abiding, those who are leading us are not. While we fulfill our own social obligations, those who are leading us are not. So it is a case of deprivation that we cannot allow to continue. So injustice is a phenomenon that has gone on for too long. And now the people must step in by reasserting their power through a deed of contract between them and the politicians. Because if you look at the socio-political space today, the people do not see themselves as stakeholders. And that is why if you watch the statistics between 2003 till 2015, the number of Nigerians who get their PVCs has been on the rise. But those who eventually go to the polling booth has consistently declined. That says something. There is voter apathy in the society.
We'll come to that. We'll come to
You
that.
know.
I wanted to hear your take in terms of the injustices. By that, we're looking at the people who, by virtue of their status in society, don't get equal treatment when it comes to arrests, when it comes to prosecution, when it comes to sentencing. And you will find out that without a doubt, many of these things that we're talking about happen to be as a result of either the poor people, like you said, not knowing their rights, or the people who are at the top decide, look, this is the way it has always been, and it will always be. Let me go back go back to Chalaboy, because there's quite a bit about your life fighting for the oppressed and the common man, and there are no two ways about that. Charlie, what brought about the creation of the Mudandu? I know he's given me some historical background, but as a convener, something must have literally motivated you to say, like you say, enough is enough. But I want you to relate it to maybe some of the specifics that you may have encountered when it comes to how you see certain people being oppressed.
Well, all my life, for the 60-something odd years I've lived on this earth, I've always been fighting for my identity, fighting for my liberation, fighting against several injustices that I see. And I remember when I was little, my father would always say to me, whenever you see injustice,
who was a judge.
Yes. Would always say to me, whenever you see injustice, fight it. Because if you don't, it might come back to chop your head off. He specifically said, chop your head off. So that imagery about anything chopping my head off was something I couldn't contain. Yeah? Like I always say, God gives everybody different kinds of gifts. And I think the gift that, and it's until you realize and appreciate God's gift to you, you start to live your life on purpose. Okay? So I've always been casted in that mode. I've always abhorred injustice of any kind to anybody that I know or even don't know. Okay? But I must say this. This movement, Mumu Don't Do, I didn't start it. It was started by a few outstanding, exceptional young people who came to me at a particular time, at a time that I didn't know what to do with myself. I was wondering, do I retire? Do I keep hustling? My father retired at 64. I don't see any reason why I should be working past 64. I'm past 64. So I was contemplating on that when they came to say, we need to protest in front of National Assembly. Okay? That they would like for me to be the face, to come, to lead the march. And that was exactly what I did. Of course, they know my antecedents. They know that the struggle has taken over me. So we did that. But no sooner had that been done, I realized that about a month or two after, yeah, they were sincere in what they
set out to do.
What they set out to do, but I don't know in terms of trying to put it together whether they were sincere about feeling like, you know, this is really from the heart, if you know what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, I was down some millions, and when I stopped bringing the money for those kind of stuff, they fizzled out. They disappeared. But then something had already again, once more, started in me. So that was how I had to go to Lagos. That was how I had to look for people who would be on the same page with this idea, because it was a beautiful idea. How do we wake up the ignorant Nigerians, the nonchalant Nigerians, the nonchalant youths who are wasting away? How do we do that? And the only way to get into their psyche is through their contemporaries. Okay? So that was how I found people like Raf and many amazing young chaps to put them together. You see, my job as a convener is just to connect the dots. It's just to get all these exceptional Nigerians together in a room and say, do the needful. That's just my job. To give this movement that integrity that it deserves. For everybody to know that this is not just another one of those struggles. This is not just another CSO people operating in wherever. Okay, this is different.
Charlie, let me just slow you down for a minute so that we take a quick break.
Nigerian women are the ones who build this economy from the bottom to the top.
Gender Agenda, every Saturday at 1 p.m. with Adora Onyechere.
Welcome back to the summit. This special episode is about two faces of the law. And we could not be happier than to have someone who spent the better part of his life trying to correct the injustices of the past and the present. So Charlie and his National Secretary, Adebayo, are in the studio. We wanted to speak specifically to, at what point do we say a poor person has actually gotten the short end of the stick? Because you see people who are poor arrested,
bundled in the truck and taken away. Sometimes they spend days in at the jailhouse before somebody tries to bail them out. While at the same time, people who have committed mega crimes are invited to appear at the different police stations at will.
And they refuse to go.
And they refuse to go. You see, what has our system done to an extent that the poor person really, like they say, has no right in his own country?
The system is a decrepit one. Our system has so much degenerated that right now, to fight injustice must be a deliberate effort from the people. You see, justice and peace are two Siamese twins. You cannot have peace without justice, and vice versa. In the country today, we all saw how the government of the day started to democratically practice dictatorship. And that was why recently we said we are living in a democratic dictatorship. Because you look at it, just one day, the instruments of the state invaded the community in this state and killed 347 people. Buried over 1,000 people in mass graves. And the country just went on.
Are you talking about
like
the
nothing happened.
herdsman dilemma?
No, I'm talking about the Shiite Muslims. The figures are there on the internet. It happened. And then you look at their leader, who has been incarcerated for more than 3 years now, despite several court orders to let him go. Then you look at the youths. People between 18 and 35 in this country are being victimized by instruments of the state. On a daily basis, they are being extorted. Sometimes they are shot arbitrarily, without account. And sometimes they are locked up for no reason. And then randomly people come, call their names, shoot them, and bury them. No account. Nobody is holding anybody accountable. So we cannot say that in this kind of situation, we are going to have peace. It is not possible. So the injustice in the system today is something that we must address consciously. Because as I said earlier, there are just two parties in this country, the oppressed and the oppressors. And this is a time, we believe, that the oppressed must begin to speak. Because the longer this continues, the further our nation will continue to deteriorate.
So what you're literally saying now is that what transpired with the Shiite Muslims is a good example of the poor not having the opportunity. And whereas if let's say only two people within the class of the oppressors had actually had similar fate.
Let me take it a bit further.
Okay.
When we did the Resume or Resign campaign in Abuja here, we were less than 10. But because the state said what we had done the day before had gone viral and international, and we were causing the country an embarrassment, they mobilized more than 200 policemen, wild dogs, water cannons, tear gas, against less than 10 people. And all of these things were used against us. We were brutally attacked like criminals because we're exercising our fundamental human rights. Now, the day after that day, about 200 people were mobilized to counter our protest. And these people even tried to attack us. But tear gas was not used on them. The wild dogs were not used on them because they served the interest of the people who are oppressing us. So it is not a case of whether it exists. It is a case of whether we are willing to accept that it exists. Injustice is a serious problem in this country. And injustice does not manifest itself only in the case of random killing of people. It also manifests itself in the aspect of corruption.
I was going to bring that up.
You know, it is massive injustice, right? When some people loot the commonwealth of the state and they go scot-free, and those who are supposed to be the benefits of that commonwealth are languishing in poverty. Until recently, for the past 11 years, I think, Joshua Dariye, past governor, and Jolly Yami, past governor, until recently, that they were jailed. We've not had such a landmark judgment in a long time in Nigeria. And that is to tell you, while I laud that judgment, I sympathize with the victims of the atrocity that those who committed that crime
Now,
had cost.
you know, what is interesting about what you just brought up is there a political motive, would you say, behind their being incarcerated at this time? Charlie, would you say, is there a political motive? Because how many governors
Of course,
have we
I've
seen?
started to see things in those kind of corners, you know? Because somebody said sometime, it's been said all over the place anyway, the people who are leading us, the leadership in position these days, they seem to be clueless. They seem to not know what democracy is all about. And I just laugh and I say they know. It's not like they don't know, but they have a different set of agenda. And when you have your own agenda, you know, that is what you pursue, okay? Because the demons that are in power today are not here to do democracy with us. They are not mindful of the Constitution. They don't care two pence about the Constitution. They have an agenda they want to implement. And that is why somebody, one of their kinds, will be bold enough to say, defend yourself and arm yourself and be ready. One of their own would also tell us there's collusion, they're colliding. We didn't say that. They said that. So we have come to understand that this is a strategic system to keep us where they think we belong, to keep us oppressed and suppressed in perpetuity. And that is not going to go on any further. I'm glad that not everybody, but majority of the young people, that's my constituency. Those are the people I care for because they must retrieve their stolen future. Is it any wonder when young people, when they leave the shores of this country, that they excel? You see the beautiful things young people are doing abroad. The medical sector in America now, thanks to the Nigerian doctors.
Even in South Africa.
Canadian people, do you know the amount of brain drain that is going on now?
Oh, absolutely. It's humongous.
So why is it that our leaders that have been around, that have traveled around, that have seen the world, will come back only to make Nigeria a shithole country? That's kind of sad.
Thanks to the American president. You know, there are quick examples as to why the two faces of the law has actually become so prominent.
Because they get away with murder. They get away with everything.
You see?
Okay.
Looking, you recently, I think the Senate president has been accused, okay, for allegedly being involved in some Kwara State crime. But the manner in which he is being treated is different from those who are currently being, I wouldn't say they're not being incarcerated, but they're in detention for the same thing. So when you look at the imbalance, two two people accused of the same crime. One is being given unfettered access to the justice system, and the other seems to have been convicted by virtue of his being arrested. See, so the glaring example of those two faces of the law becomes so prominent, so obvious.
You see, when we allow the very worst of us to lead the best of us, this is what you get. When you allow riffraffs and vagabonds to occupy our political space, this is what you get. And that's why we're saying we're tired. Enough should be enough. We may not be able to recall for 2019, but we know we're about to disrupt, because it will never come to them as easy as they've always had it. It will never.
Interesting. You wanted to add something earlier. I think I kind of stopped you.
Yes,
what was it?
you know, but it is important, like you said, to point out that one only becomes an enemy of the state when you fail to pander to the demands of the current leaders of the state. We have seen in this country.
But this is not peculiar to Nigeria, you know that.
It is not, but Nigeria's case is an extraordinary one that must be understudied by every concerned Nigerians, because 58 years is too long a time for us to still be wallowing in the same decrepit that we had when we got our independence. You know, corruption in Nigeria today is a sign of injustice, and I will tell you how. Almost everyone who surrounds the president today has been alleged of one form of corruption or the other, from the high GP to the chief of staff, and the list goes on and on and on like that. But the president, who came to power as an anti-corruption champion, has failed to do something. But when it has to do with the opposition or someone who the president does not like.
But let me ask you this.
Yes.
If you say he has failed to do something, you will, I mean, is that very correct? Because before now,
Yes. Yes.
before now,
Yes.
a lot of these things were swept under. And you can go back as to how many years, all right? For the fact that I think he had the gut, or his administration had a gut to expose some of
leave
these.
that side.
No,
Leave
I
that
mean,
side.
let's just...
Let us look at the facts. No, let us look at the facts. Let us look at the facts.
I'm ready to-
Under the present administration, the former SGF was alleged to have used the money of the common people to cut grass, about 500 million naira. And until the Amumudondo movement stormed the streets, the president was not willing to do anything. Now, when we sustained our advocacy, what we had demanded was for the SGF to be prosecuted. But because he had to get some sort of protection from the state, they decided to relieve him of his position. But today, he's still a free man. Do you call that justice?
Well, that's the two faces of the law I wanted
That's
you
not
to address.
justice.
No,
You know?
It's the two faces of the law we're talking about.
And then we have the chief of staff, who has also been alleged of about 500 million naira bribe with MTN.
But
Today
then-
he's working scot-free.
Correct.
The same with the high GP of police, who was also alleged to be collecting a huge money from politicians and VIPs, whilst the Nigerian people are dying of lack of security. Today, he's still working a free man. Even our president said it, you know, to the entire world, that this IGP is defying him. But a president who has the wherewithal to fight corruption that manifests itself in different forms like this would have done something, but he didn't. Now, if you compare that case to that of the ordinary man on the street, if you read the newspapers, you will see a man steals 1,000 and is jailed, is sent to jail for 12, 13 months, some 2 years, some 3 years, just for 1,000 naira. And we forget to pay attention, you see, to the repercussions of this injustice that we're allowing to try. People are dying every day.
But
people are committing suicide.
Can I say this? And Charlie, I want you to jump in here. They say Rome was not built in a day. Do you agree? Or let's use our own village. Abuja was not built in a day. Isn't this a process that you need to be able to encourage to sustain? If all these things are coming out, which in the past, and I say that again, in the past, these things were swept under the carpet. You see, because over time...
Excuse me, please, let's not, all of this is just mere semantics, okay? That's what I call it, mere semantics. So things have gotten worse.
Things have gotten worse?
Of course. Where are you? Are you from Ghana?
No.
Are you from Ghana?
I think down the road.
Don't you go to the same market?
We do.
Are things any better than they were last year? Things have gotten worse. The corruption that exists now is you know, get part two. The kind of money that they've stolen now, in the now, is mind-boggling. And they want to whitewash and make us feel that they this is a government of corruption.
No, Charlie.
This is a government of deceit.
Look,
this is a government that just capitalizes on lying to the people, insensitive about what we're going through.
Yeah.
This is a government we no send. Their mind they for back.
If you are talking about the past administration,
let me have a quick break. Let me have a quick break.
We're gonna be mad here.
Let me have a quick break. We're gonna come right back.
Nigerian women are the ones who build this economy from the bottom to the top.
Gender Agenda, every Saturday at 1 p.m. with Adora Onyechere.
Welcome back to the summit. I want you to react to this because when we were researching, we found parts of the law that said a suspect or defendant may not be handcuffed, bound, or be subjected to restraint except there is one, reasonable apprehension of violence or an attempt to escape. 2, the restraint is considered necessary for the safety of the suspect or defendant. And 3rd, by order of the court. But the general thing that takes place in Nigeria is that every poor person, from the way that we know it, is handcuffed. And I think it was a case of Metu who was not, or who refused to be, that actually brought this to the fore. What is your reaction on that one?
You know, the issue of how people are treated in this country has already been highlighted earlier. It is just unfortunate because, like you said now, you mentioned Olisametu's name. It is unfortunate that these issues come to fore when it has to do with one of the VIPs in this country. But when it happens to the ordinary man, everyone looks away. That is the unfortunate part. We are all victims in this country.
But it was the ordinary man who was saying that Metu was disrespected because he was handcuffed.
Which ordinary man? The ordinary man that has not hit him in Alaba. Knows that
but they were the people who were reflecting that.
No, let us be frank. You know? You see, what people forget to recognize in this country is that evil mutates. Right. When you see evil from afar and you decide to ignore it, it will catch up with you eventually.
So isn't it conditioning? Have they been conditioned?
They created this mess that we are living in now.
Who created it?
Olisametu was part of the past administration. What did they do to write this system?
Okay.
That's the question that we should ask.
But what I'm saying is that why is the reaction from the common man that he was being disrespected?
We have to be careful when we are talking about common man. Which common man is talking about Olisametu? The common man cannot feed himself today.
Bothered about his livelihood, how he's surviving tomorrow. not about Olisameto.
Being disrespected.
Yes.
It is
The
unfortunate.
common man, we know. They are bothered about survival.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? There's so much poverty that we have no business with in this country. That's what the common man is bothered
Chalaboy,
about.
what do you guys have on your plate on Mumu Don't Do? Our Mumu Don't Do.
Our Mumu don't.
Purely
It's
because.
called a social contract.
Okay.
Okay? That is going to, Raf will explain all of that in a short time now. That is going to help us overcome this poverty, this jabajantis in government, this foolishness, this impunity. Because enough of all these riffraffs, enough of exchanging one thief for another. That's what we've had so far since independence. We exchange one thief for another thief. And we think we're making progress. So we've come up with something which we think will aid us in the process of healing this nation and moving forward. Break it down.
Adebayo, take
You know,
it away. Let's see.
since the topic of today is injustice, and injustice breeds corruption and all other concomitants, it is important to inform the general public that the Mumu Don't Do movement has designed an initiative that will liberate us from the pangs of these injustices around us and the massive corruption going on in the country. When we talk about the social contract, what we're simply saying is that we want to increase citizens' participation in the democratic process. What we are simply saying is that we want a situation where the common man can own the democratic process, whereby we wouldn't have to mortgage our future for a few penny, but be part of the process that brings about the person who will lead us. You see, the concept of a social contract is that we as humans, with our natural, our human right, are giving up our right to lead ourselves to another person, to represent us and represent our collective interest. So the concept of a social contract is to define mutual obligations between those who are seeking political office and the people who will vote them into that office. It is defining an agreement, more often a written agreement, between those who are seeking political office and those who will elect them. So that when those people get into power, they can be held accountable by that contract. Because what we have had so far, is a situation where when people get to the polling booth, they sell their votes. And when you sell your vote for 1,000, 2,000 naira, you deny yourself the right to demand accountability from that person you are voting in future.
Thank you, Adebayo. You know what I'm trying to say. The idea of a social contract is not new. In fact, it's very commendable. But how do you hope to achieve this?
Very good. Very good. You know, I must include now, before I go into the how, that the social contract concept is basically a concept of what I, the voter, can do for you, what you, the politician or political party, can do for me, and what we can do for ourselves. So in essence, we have designed this campaign to run as a national campaign, whereby we will gather the demands of the Nigerian people as the voice of the common people in this country. We gather their demands, and then we put it into a document, and then that will serve as our negotiation tool with political parties and those seeking political office, so that when they get into power, they can be held accountable by that document. Needless to say, that those who are in Borno today, who are victims of the Boko Haram tragedy going on, have their own demands for the government. And those who are in the North Central, the Benue people, who are being attacked on a daily basis by the herdsmen, also have their own demands from the politician.
I just hate to bust
So
your
we put all of this together.
Hang on.
Yeah.
I hate to bust your bubble. What you're doing is noble. What you're trying to achieve, I believe, if it is achievable,
It is.
it will change this country for good. Unfortunately, the character of and the culture of our people, and as to how subservient we have been all these years. When people get into power, isn't the first thing they do is to throw away both the emotional contract and all kinds of contract. You see, because when I'm asking you how do you achieve this, think through the process. Okay? You're going to gather all these ideas and all the other things. And see, so I'm also hoping that part of your modus operandi involves being able to say we have this number of people behind us. It's one thing to say, I need to sign. It's another thing to get up and say, we, our Mumu Dandu, represent. And you have to quantify it. So I'm curious as to how you can achieve.
You see, as it stands now, the movement has solid structures in Abuja, Lagos, Anambra, Imo, Benue. And with this campaign, we are looking to spread our tentacles. And our structure does not even stay within the confines of this country alone. We have Nigerians in the diaspora every single day signing up for the movement and showing their interest to participate. So when we say we represent the voice of the common man, it is not an assumption, it is a fact. But on the issue of how, you see, the essence of this social contract is for the people to have the courage and a predicate to hold leaders accountable. We have a social contract. The idea of the social contract is not new. But what we are doing with the social contract now is very new. There has never been a time in this country when the people and those seeking political office had a written agreement that they both signed to. And the people are sufficiently informed that we have an agreement with these people. It is a different thing to have a manifesto and come to the people and say all sorts of things. It is another thing to have a contract with the people. And the people know that what you are doing now is that you are signing a contract with them. Because when you get into power, there is no longer going to be that division of narratives of whether you have performed or not. Because if what we mandated you to do is to give us 2 roads if you get into power, and you fail to give us 2 roads, and we are aware that that's what we asked you to do, then we know that it is our right to hold you accountable.
Adebayo, I've almost run out of time. Charlie boy, can you round it up for us?
Yes, in addition to all of that, I had mentioned earlier about, exchanging one thief for another.
Yes.
Okay. In the part of all of this, there's a part of all of this that speaks to the kind of people we want in governance today.
Okay.
Not criminals. Okay? People whose pedigree can be verified. What have you done in your past? Because it's as a result of, to be a politician, you don't need to go to school for that. You need to know how to do thuggery, know how to be a big criminal, and then you get in. Enough of all of that. So even from the grassroots, we have to start looking. That's why we say we're not interested in parties. We're interested in building champions, personalities. We're looking for people, the right pedigree. Because when you have a situation where you have riffraffs who are leading deep thinking people, it's abnormal. It's very abnormal.
Very abnormal.
So part of it is to start to shift the kind of people we want to see in leadership.
Thank you very much. Folks, we've come to the end of this episode of Two Faces of the Law. We were able to deviate a little bit into other things, activities of the Mumu Dandu, simply because it is relevant to righting the injustices of the past. I'd like to thank Area Father, popularly known as Charlie Boy, and the National Secretary of the Mumu Dandu.
You keep forgetting my title. I am the president
of
all frustrated Nigerians.
Amen. Amen. Of including the people with two faces of the law. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Without a doubt, today's summit has presented an indictment by a section of the society that represents some views of the masses. You may call it an introductory edition of a mini-series on topic of two faces of the law in Nigeria. It now behooves to invite other views and contributions from other stakeholders in the matter, including law enforcement agents, lawmakers, and legal practitioners. One of the issues is that the nation's prisons are full of poor, petty thieves who are completely forgotten for several years as they indefinitely wait for trial while their rich counterparts merely visit the courts from their luxurious comfort of their homes, in trials that go on indefinitely. Critics of the system posit that such inequality or segregation is the father and mother of the impunity exhibited by the rich and powerful in the society. It is also the reason that corruption in Nigeria is soaring rather than abating, because the corrupt, rich, and powerful Nigerians are virtually above the law. These are some of the issues in the next edition of Two Faces of the Law in Nigeria on the summit. Bye for now.